welcome in. Hope y'all enjoyed the Super Bowl.
I know I didn't.
Blah. I don't think a lot of people did. I mean, unless you're a Tampa Bay fan.
Just like Tom Brady's wife or something.
Or Tom Brady himself. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy.
Not a very exciting Super Bowl. Tampa Bay ran away with it pretty much by halftime. So, and obviously there weren't really any parties this year, or there should not have been. We have to condone that this year.
Yeah, it was the most low-key Super Bowl since I've been watching football religiously that I've ever partaken in.
Yeah, well, you had to. You had to out of necessity if you were a responsible person, and then on top of that, the game itself was not very good. So, unfortunate.
But now we are officially in the off season.
The off season has started, and we're ready to rock and roll here at the Face Mask Podcast. As always, John Alsace, Nick Payne. Like you mentioned, John, the off season has started, and I think it makes a lot of sense with free agency being a month away to start taking a look at, you guessed it, free agents and where we think may make the most sense for them as far as landing spots.
And this year is going to be one of the most interesting years as far as free agency because so many teams are in cap trouble. So many teams straight up have so much cap space they don't even know what to deal with. And it just seems like there's going to be a lot of movement in the NFL within the next coming months.
There are some high-end options in the free agency pool this year, and not all older veteran guys who are maybe at the, in the last 2 to 3 years of their prime. There are some good names that are available to be had if there are teams out there with the cap space. And there's a few. There are some. So with that, John, let's kick it off with, I think it's fair to say, the biggest name in free agency this year. And it just so happened that some stuff happened with this today with Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys.
I know you guys can't see the screen. I see Nick on the screen, and he did some spirit fingers things.
Some jazz hands.
Yeah, there you go, jazz hands.
Yeah.
But yeah, Dak Prescott, man, this guy, he's kind of a conundrum to me as to why his team hasn't put more of a priority on keeping him.
I don't understand why he's a free agent. I don't get it. I don't understand why that. I don't care about the inner issue or if there are any personal or whatever. Or the stance by the team makes no sense to me. Dak, to me, has proven enough at this point that he's worth franchise quarterback money.
Yeah, I mean, since 2016 when he came into the league, there are only 4 QBs with a better QBR, and that's Watson, Breeze, Mahomes, and Jackson.
So there you go.
This guy has been one of the best quarterbacks straight up in the league for the past few years. He's been pretty underrated. And this past year, while he was healthy, he was leading the league in most quarterback categories.
And for a lot of weeks after he got hurt, he was still in the top 5 in passing yards.
Yeah.
You still saw his name up at the top as far as league leaders in passing yards for a month and a half after he got hurt. Which, okay, you could say, well, that's out of necessity. Dallas's defense was so bad, but to me,
he was having 400-yard games and stuff.
Yeah.
And he was having the start to what I was thinking was going to be an all-time great season, and then he unfortunately broke his leg.
Right. Yep. Unfortunate turn of events for not just him, but Dallas' season pretty much spiraled out of control after that, which, again, another testament to why didn't they sign Dak? I know that their defense is terrible. I know their offensive line is a shell of itself as far as years past, but without Dak, their season was over the moment that injury happened.
Yeah, it just kind of seemed like they pushed all their chips in with Zeke when Zeke got the big contract, and it makes no sense as to why in 2019, 2020, whatever, just this modern era in the NFL where a team would prioritize a superstar running back over a superstar quarterback.
Horrendous.
And the superstar running back had character concern. And the superstar quarterback, his only character concern is that he believes in himself and he's willing to bet on himself.
And
that's crazy. That's crazy.
The horrible, horrendous decision by the Cowboys franchise The news that swirled around on today, this Tuesday, February 9th, the Cowboys put out a hype video for the 2021 season. Dak was noticeably absent from that video. So just leading to the speculation of what is going on. Is Dak going to leave Dallas? And so I want to get into that from a fantasy perspective. I still think that would be his best scenario, returning to Dallas, specifically because of the weapons. Now, his offensive line is not good, but we just got done talking about how he was putting up ridiculous numbers through the first month and a half before he got injured with that bad offensive line. So he's proven he can do it with not the best protection around him. And the Cowboys receivers as a group are still elite. So it would, from a fantasy perspective, still be an ideal spot for him to end up in if he were to return with Dallas. But I don't know about return to Dallas, but I don't know about you, John. It feels like that's now looking less and less likely.
Yeah, it's definitely the best position group as far as the top 3 wide receivers on that team in the NFL.
Yeah.
I can't think of another team that has a trio of wide receivers like this team. And there was also a tight end in there that got injured real early in the year.
Yeah, Blake Jarwin. A lot of people
right?
liked him to have like a mini breakout. Yep.
Right, and Zeke can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Mm-hmm.
And for those games where he was playing with Dak this season, Zeke was putting up points too. So yeah, it makes no sense that this team would kind of purposefully alienate their best player. And when we see the Deshaun Watson situation and how it's playing out right now, I could easily see Dak, who was playing on a franchise tag, so he made a pretty penny this year.
Yep.
I could easily see him just saying, if he was still locked up with that team, just saying screw you guys.
Right. Yeah. Like force their hand.
I think it's great that he's not still locked up with that team. Because if I was him, I'd feel slighted for these 4 years. He's done nothing but be consistent. 16 games every single season in his first 4 seasons in the league. But enough about Dallas. Where else do you think he could go?
So I think it makes sense for him to move on. Also from the standpoint of Dallas at this point might as well just rebuild because the rest of their team is so terrible outside of those wide receivers. But if Dak were to move on, there aren't, to your point earlier, there's not a ton of teams with the sufficient amount of cap space that would be able to afford him.
Because he's young, he's 27, he's in his prime.
Oh yeah, he should be able to play for 10 more years, or at least 7. So I think the team that is most ready-made now, and I feel like hasn't really been associated to Dak yet, is the Colts. They missed out on Matthew Stafford. There are rumors that they could trade for Carson Wentz, but Dak is just going to cost you dollars. He's not going to cost you assets that you have to trade because he's an unrestricted free agent. And the Colts have the most cap space in the NFL. They are a realistic destination for an elite quarterback because they could theoretically afford an existing big contract or dish one out in this case. The Colts have a great team, a great offensive line, a good defense. Their weapons are definitely not as strong as the Cowboys.
Well, I do want to speak to that because they have $77 million in cap space.
That's a lot.
Even if they were to sign Dak to a record-breaking deal, if they were to get him into a Mahomes-like deal.
Which they won't need to do.
But I'll make the argument that he would be deserving of something like that based off of his past production. Because like I said, the only QBs to have a better QBR since 2016, Watson, Breeze, Mahomes, and Jackson.
Yeah, Mahomes had the Super Bowl win under his belt already when he was negotiating that contract.
Right,
so that would be the one thing against Dak, but you're not talking about a lot less money.
But my point was, in making that judgment on the salary cap, even if they signed him to a $40 million contract, $40 million a year, they'd still have $37 million in cap space. They'd still have more cap space than 2/3 of the league. So they could still go out and with that roster, sign another wide receiver, sign a Corey Davis or an Allen Robinson or somebody like that if they can pull Chris Godwin away. I could see the Colts doing that if they went all in on Dak. Because again, like you said, it's not going to cost them any draft picks.
Right. It's just going to cost dollars. Now, this would make the most sense as far as playing to win for Dak. I think the Colts are a team ready-made to compete and win now. From a fantasy perspective, yeah, this would actually not be as an ideal of a landing spot as the Cowboys because bad defenses mean the quarterbacks have to produce more over the course of the game. Now, it would certainly help if they could bring in a number one option in the passing game because while Michael Pittman is an interesting and ascending talent, T.Y. Hilton is no longer on that level of wide receiver one production.
And he's a free agent.
So he may not even be back.
Yeah, right now it's Pittman and Pascal, or who his pass catchers would be.
So they're going to look to upgrade there in the receiving department regardless. So if they were able to bring in, say, an Allen Robinson, oh my God, that would be amazing. Now you're talking about giving Dak a great offensive line, an outstanding run game, and a potential number one option who is available to the Colts in free agency. This would then all of a sudden, he's right in as good of a situation, maybe not as good, but not too significant of a step down that he was with the Cowboys, again, from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, and from an NFL and just winning perspective, it'd be way above Dallas. Way above Dallas.
Oh, without a doubt. So there's a little concern built in there because the quarterback maybe doesn't have to do as much game over game because the defense is actually, getting stops. The offense doesn't have to score as many points. But it makes sense for Dak from not just a financial perspective because the Colts could afford him, but he would go to a team that is a quarterback away from championship contention. It's a match that I think makes a lot of sense. There are others.
It's a match made in heaven, really.
Yeah, there are other options, but I think that would make the most sense. But there are a couple other teams that if they wanted to, they could jump into the Dak bidding war.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up two teams here that I wouldn't want to see him go to, and then we can talk about more fun locales.
But maybe they're realistic. These are realistic locations.
Just because of the cap space that they have.
That's what matters.
No, it's the Jets and the Patriots.
Okay.
The Jets just got off of how many years with Gase and just being
too many.
The butt of everybody's joke.
They had him for 2 seasons. It was too many.
Right. So they have $69 million in cap space.
Nice.
So they could obviously afford him. And just like the Colts, they could afford to bring in another offensive weapon along with him. But I just don't believe in this team. And I don't think he would want to go there.
I don't think so. The Jets are not ready to compete yet. And they're probably going to take a quarterback with their second pick.
And I could say the same thing about the Patriots, who are the next team that I have here at $62 million in cap space. Again, they have the space to sign him and sign another offensive weapon. But from his perspective, having just been in Dallas dealing with Jerry Jones, I don't think he wants to go to a team like the Patriots that's so strict and it's all about the team and not the individual. And I think Dak deserves to go to a team that is going to celebrate him as an individual. And I don't think the Patriots are that. So I think the Patriots are kind of off the table.
Yeah, the Patriots are an interesting destination, but they also don't strike me as the type of team that would dish out that much money to one player, even a quarterback, which they sorely need. But
it's a good point.
But on the flip side there, Bill Belichick is not some 35-year-old startup head coach. He's only got so many years left, you would assume, before he maybe wants to, retire. So he could be trying to get back to that win now mode as quickly as he can. And Dak Prescott would offer the quickest and easiest path to get back to contention for the Patriots, because if they get their defensive pieces back who opted out from COVID, it's not a bad overall team. They have no wide receivers, so they would need to absolutely address that.
Or tight ends.
Or tight ends.
Running backs are suspect.
Yeah.
And their O-line isn't great. Their offense
in general needs
the work
needs
here.
a lot of
Their
work.
defense is good, as you said, as long as everybody opts back in for the 2021 season. But from an offensive perspective, and just from an organizational perspective, I know Bill Belichick has a lot of cachet, but I don't see this match happening. I just don't.
It seems a little difficult to envision, but crazier things have happened. There's one more destination that is intriguing, but I don't know how realistic it is. And that's Washington.
Washington was my fourth team I was going to bring up.
Okay.
And to me, I kind of like that landing spot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a team that, to me, Washington, I don't want to give them too much credit because I don't think they're a Super Bowl caliber team as a whole right now, but it's kind of like Tampa Bay in 2019. Yeah, they were 7-9, but you could see the defense was good. The pieces were there on offense. They just had a quarterback that couldn't help turning the ball over multiple times per game. They went in, they got Tom Brady. Look what happened. They win the Super Bowl. I don't think Washington's roster is there yet, but their defense is ascending, and that might be selling them short. Their defense looks great. They've got an outstanding young receiver in Terry McLaurin and some interesting young pieces along the offense in general. Logan Thomas emerged at tight end. Antonio Gibson emerged at running back. There are some interesting pieces on this offense where Washington wouldn't have to necessarily spend up like Indianapolis presumably would because they've already got those pieces in place.
Right, and they're not working with nearly as much cap space as the other three teams that we've already mentioned. They only have $39 million in cap space. I would like to only have $39 million in my back pocket, but that's not the world we live in. But Dak Prescott. Yeah. So Dak Prescott could definitely go to Washington and succeed. Like you, I really like these offensive pieces that they've kind of accumulated. And they're good. I think I like their defense even more than you. I mean,
I admit it.
A beast.
Yeah, I said myself. I think I was selling them short by saying they're ascending. Yeah. It is a strong unit.
It's a great defensive unit.
Yeah,
and
especially the line.
That is the first landing spot since we brought up the Colts that I would be excited about seeing Dak there. And obviously, it'd be in the same division.
Mm-hmm.
So it would create some interesting rivalries there.
Little revenge factor for Dak getting to play the Cowboys. He may want getting the opportunity to stick it to Dallas a couple times a year. You know that players are motivated that way. So, in summary, from a fantasy perspective, I still think Dallas would ultimately end up being it's still a positive situation because of those receivers.
Before I summarize, two quick spots.
Okay.
Because I always hear, when I look at the cap space, I don't see it happening. But every year, especially this year, I've heard every NFL analyst that I've listened to pretty much say teams can work around the cap.
Yeah, they figure things out.
The Broncos have $19 million in cap space, and I think they're in need of a quarterback upgrade. And the 49ers have $13 million in cap space, and we know they need a quarterback upgrade. So, if either of these two teams, the Broncos and the Niners, could figure out a way to get Dak on their team and under the cap, where would you rather see him go? Broncos or Niners?
From a fantasy perspective, probably Denver. I think their offensive weapons have a little bit more promise. Noah Fant is, I would say, a top 7 tight end at this point. Maybe even a little bit better than that. I think.
Yeah, he just needs to stay healthy.
Yep. I think Jerry Jeudy is an ascending talent. They get Cortland Sutton back from a season-ending injury. He's an ascending talent. I think KJ Hamler is a decent little player. And Melvin Gordon is still probably got a year or two in the backfield. So it's a good overall offensive personnel.
I'm offended you didn't mention Mr. Two First Names.
Never trust
Tim
a guy.
Patrick.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Philip Lindsay. I thought you were going to say Philip Lindsay. I guess they have to. I'm sorry. I forgot about Tim Patrick.
Philip Lindsay's a free agent.
Okay.
So we don't have to talk about it.
No, Tim Patrick has also flashed this year. Looks like a pretty good player. So from a fantasy perspective, I think Denver would make sense. I think from a trying to win and compete, San Francisco might be a little bit better of an option for Dak because that defense is excellent and their run game is probably year in, year out, one of the most consistent upper echelon groups in the NFL because of Shanahan.
And we might be selling them short a little bit on the Niners. I mean, they got Ayuk, they got Debo coming back if he can stay healthy. They got Kittle there, who's obviously one of the best tight ends in the league, and you've already spoken about the run game. So I don't want to sell the Niners short, but I do agree with you. I think from a fantasy perspective, I think the Broncos would be a more exciting landing spot for Dak.
Ayuk and Debo they are. I don't even want to say they're nice little pieces. They are good. They are good ass players at the wide receiver position, and Kittle's a top 2 tight end. But the Niners, they run a lot of intermediate, things at the line, plays at the line of scrimmage, work in space, and
they got a new head coach.
The Niners don't have a new head coach.
Oh no, they didn't.
They
Robert Saleh left.
Right, yeah, they lost.
Saleh, he went to the Jets.
The Jets have a new head coach from San Francisco. No, that's okay. My bad. I think their offense revolves around short, quick, intermediate work, let the receivers and playmakers do things in space, which is not bad, but I think that ceiling of big plays is not going to be there as much.
I think that had to do with the quarterbacks they had and
could.
Basically having their number 1 receiver be a tight end.
And
not having the receiving talent. I mean, Ayuk and Debo are relatively new pieces to the Niners.
And missed time this year, especially Debo. Right. So if they're over their injuries, especially Kittle and Debo, then could be a good landing spot. I would say that I think San Francisco's defense, if healthy, is better than Denver. So again, that's kind of my one, along the same lines of Indianapolis. It would be a great spot for him to land as far as competing, but the fantasy ceiling might be capped a little bit if you go to a good team and points are not needed as much. But it is the NFL in 2021 when everybody's throwing all the time. So we're just nitpicking. I think the Colts are the destination that realistically makes the most sense because they don't have to do any maneuvering with the cap already. They have the space.
And they have the team. They're ready made.
And they have the team.
I would really like to see him go to the Colts.
I think Colts,
you're 100% right as far as putting that as your number 1 spot for him.
I think the Colts make a lot of sense. I think the Jets and Patriots, they also realistically have cap room right now. They feel less likely, though, for a couple of different reasons. Washington feels like a dark horse. And if Denver and San Francisco are able to make some maneuvering with the cap happen, then they'll be in the mix. But I think they are a little bit more distant because they have so many things to address, whereas there are 4 other teams that could offer Dak the contract right now without any financial issues or cap issues holding them back. It feels like at this point Dak's days in Dallas are numbered, but from a fantasy perspective, I think they would still actually offer him the highest ceiling as far as production.
What do you guys think? Do you guys agree with us? Do you guys think that a different team should be in the driver's seat than any of the 6 that we mentioned? Give us your thoughts in the comment section below, and thank you for listening.